You've built it, you've protected it, and you've grown it. But how do you make sure it actually lands in the right hands? So today on the Wealth Guide podcast, we're going to talk about the part of wealth that's the hardest to talk about. So not the investments or the tax, but family, fairness, and the legacy that you leave behind. Welcome to the Wealth Guide podcast, episode 61. Today we're going to talk about legacy and longevity, how to pass wealth the right way without the family fallout, and that's the key part, right? So for today, guys, we've got the lovely Ahmed Hussain from ABH Lawyers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Jack, welcome back. It's nice to see you as always.
You too, boss.
Excellent. And Ray Regimi, I don't know who you are. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you, boss.
Thank you. So what we want to cover off today, so really simple. You know, you've built it, you've protected it, you've grown it, but how do you make sure it actually lands in the right hands when it is time to pass your wealth on? And so today what we want to talk about is the part of your wealth that is the hardest to talk about. So planning, your investments, your tax, who do you leave it to, and the legacy that you leave behind. And how do you make sure that not only is it fair, but that it's binding where possible? So with that, we might kick off with you, Ahmed.
Well, thank you. I'll start off with a quote from Mr. Buffett. Excuse me. He mentioned something about trees and shade. He said that someone or something is sitting under shade today because you started planting yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And that's something that I think about every day in estate planning. Now, we've got an estate planning team, and we've been around many professionals in the estate planning field, some who've got much more experience than I do. And some of the things that you see are absolutely critical, some are astonishing, and some just blow your mind away.
Right.
Some of the situations you come across, family dynamics, wealth, improper advice. I mean, it's a long list of chaos. But in terms of longevity, it's really just starting and getting a proper start, and getting proper advice.
Yeah.
We come across a lot of clients who have an abundance of wealth, and that's just to be frank, and that is primarily thanks to people like yourselves who help them build that, right, and other great professionals. They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, they don't know how to sustain it or
Yeah.
pass it on. That's a real common issue. One of the most common questions I get asked in my practice every single day, and I've never not been asked this question on a daily basis, is, do you do wills? Simple question, every single day. The answer is yes, we do, of course. We have a estate planning team. Our estate planning team consists of a couple of solicitors who are really experienced in the field, and some strictly going into estate planning. The common question is, do you do wills? Yes, we do, of course. The second question is, how much do you charge? And it's a bit of a strange question because one charge or one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
It
We say
varies.
that's not what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true.
If you ask me how much we charge for an estate plan or a will, I can't tell you because
Yeah.
first of all, I don't
How
know
long is a piece of
I don't know
string?
your context, and I don't know your background, and I don't know your assets, and I don't know the thousand complex things in your life and the evolvements that are going to happen between now and 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't know that. So I say, well, the response I say is, well, I'll have to assess it and come back to you. We'll give you some free advice in the interim.
Yeah.
Just make sure you look after me, it's not too expensive. And my response generally is this, in the most respectful way, I say, if you think estate planning is expensive, try and dine without a will.
That's it. So what is the real cost of poor estate planning?
You can't put a price on it.
That's exactly right.
You can't put a price on it.
Yeah. So I guess one of the questions that I would ask, and I would put it out to the whole group, is it's almost like a taboo to talk about legacy and estate planning and wills and who's leaving what to who. Like it's a conversation that families don't necessarily always have. You know, and I'd lean on all of you because you have all those intimate conversations with people. Why do people not have those conversations? Like, what are they avoiding?
Look, I think let's look at the uncomfortable truth, right? Like most people don't want to talk about it. Well, it's not because they're lazy, it's because it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. They don't want to start the family drama. So for them, there's a whole lot of emotional issues that it evokes. And I think for the most part of that reason, and I think people try and avoid it as much as they can.
Yeah.
And it's not the ideal conversation I want to have at a Sunday roast dinner to go, let's talk about my steak.
We'll make a pasta that day.
Yeah. So I think that's the main part, which sort of evokes a lot of emotion for people. But here's the kicker, right? Not having it is a catastrophe.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because you say that it, can evoke emotion and arguments and fights and bits and pieces, but by not discussing it, you're still not avoiding that. It just means you are individually not around to be a part of it. But it's on a much greater scale, you would imagine.
It guarantees confusion later. It guarantees you a litigation issue. Well, I can't say it guarantees you, but there's 9 out of 10 times there's going to be litigation issues. There's confusion within the family to go, this is what I was supposed to get, this is what you were supposed to get. What are the CGT consequences? But I'm paying tax on this property and you're not.
Yeah.
So how's that fair? So there's a whole lot of background conversation that comes out of it, and which sort of creates this chaos and confusion with the whole family.
Yeah. And look, I did, mention it in an earlier podcast today where a client that I was speaking to recently, there's, her mum, her sister and her, and they've always been a bit of a trio, and her mum recently passed. And, there was no conversation about the estate, but in the will it was like 50-50. Now, had this mum had a conversation prior, it might have been something that was mitigated. But the other sister has now taken legal action around the fact that, yes, mum's left us 50-50, but you don't need 50% and I need more because my lifestyle is different to yours, as in affordability, bills, expenses, available funds. And again, that parent has done her own estate planning, but not had a conversation. So what happens in that regard? Like, do you see a lot of that?
We do, and it goes back to each situation having its own context. It's as simple as that. Now, it's very important to note, more than 50% of Australians die without a will.
Wow, staggering number.
Absolutely. When I read that a while ago, I was baffled. More than 50% of Australians die without a will.
Wow.
So more than 50% of Australians are dying and leaving their affairs blank.
Wow.
Ultimately, who decides who gets what?
Trustees.
The state.
But it's not even about who gets what, it's what's out there in the world that no one knows about.
Well, exactly right. And touching back on what you were saying, Bella, if you had a situation where there was a 50-50 split, for example, and one daughter might be extremely well off, married a rich husband or has done well for herself in a career, the other one's struggling financially, the question's always going to be tossed, well, why should it be 50-50? Should it be more for me because I'm struggling? Or perhaps maybe I did more for mum or dad during their lifetime.
See that all the time.
Or one very, very common one was, during mum and dad's lifetime, I helped with their bills. I helped with their groceries. I helped renovate the house.
Yeah.
I was around more to look after them when you weren't, perhaps. That's where conflict arises. And I've seen that both in the field and in some personal circumstances. And I'll tell you one thing. A lot of the times when someone says they're not going to do a will, or not going to claim their estate, the common idea, the common quote is, my kids love each other and we're family.
Everyone loves each other till money's involved, right?
Thank you. I've seen the absolute closest of bonds shattered to a million pieces.
Yeah.
Simply due to poor estate planning or no estate planning. And again, everyone loves each other until money's involved and the estate's involved and property's involved and blended families arise and stepchildren and stepmoms, stepdads, and it becomes chaos.
That's an interesting thing, blended families.
Yeah.
Right now I was just talking about that. How do the dynamics of that one family plus the other families?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Oh, it's messy. It's chaotic.
The 9 out of 10 times the spouse and the other spouse and the other going,
Yeah.
but this is not fair to you, so
No,
you should be up to
exactly
right.
right.
Yeah. You know what, look, I'd finish off this section that we're talking about now with a really nice story. Is I also have a friend who, her dad passed away, like 20 years ago. But her mum and dad had been divorced many years. That part of the family she didn't really have a lot to do with. But the grandmother had always promised the dad that, God forbid the day when I pass, even though he had 2 children with one wife, one with another, and we're talking adults into their 40s now, that I will always make sure your daughter, my friend, gets her share. And he goes, I actually want her to get 50% and I want the other two to get 25%. So fast forward, he's now, the grandmother's now passed, like many years later. She expected nothing of it. The house got sold, she didn't go to the auction, nothing like that. She got a knock on the door from her step siblings going, here's your check, this is what Dad wanted you to have, here it is. Like, you never hear those stories. Like,
It's a pretty rare case.
Right,
Yeah.
that she was
That's
just
pretty
like,
rare.
So it's just it's nice to know that sometimes nice things can happen, but it is the minority, right? So I guess the leading thing is that, you know, how do we then work through those things so that those things don't destroy those emotional things? But then how do we then manage that scale of that transfer? You know, we're talking about percentages and all of that kind of thing. And I think, you know, we have an aging population, so wealth transfer is going to be at its peak right now in the next coming period. And I think we're talking of, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars in generational wealth.
There's trillions, I think, maybe.
Maybe.
But
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
essentially, I think from my point of view, it starts right with the conversation, whether it's an advisor level, whether it's a lawyer level. It's not sort of having a confronting conversation with the client. It's all about saying, well, what kind of legacy do you want to leave your kids? How do you want to plan this, rather than going, well, let's do wills and estate because you may die. So it's about having the predisposition of that conversation in a very easy manner where it's not confronting to the client.
Do you encourage your clients to have a conversation with their family about their estate to help mitigate
Absolutely.
this
Because
fast
I think
forward problem?
the conversation, when it's had openly with the family, what it looks like, what's the financial consequences on that child if that was to inherit a property, which is an investment property, they've got to pay CGT. Is that fair? When you put all the numbers and specific circumstances on the table, the conversation's a lot smoother and easier, and it's resolved right there and then. Everyone then takes their roles and responsibilities to go, well, what would it look like?
Yeah.
So it's more, the good estate planning is more about clarity. It's not having a great will,
Yeah.
but it's about having that clarity with that will.
Who's getting the
Or the
tea
estate
pot?
planning. Yeah.
Yeah,
All the
exactly.
plates.
All the plates. Absolutely.
You even encourage people to actually have those conversations amongst their family. If you're going to fight about it, do it now.
Do it now.
This is my thing. Like, I feel
Do it
like
now.
there's that whole other layer of that.
Yeah.
Hash it out now because it's a lot cheaper and a lot quicker than doing it after someone's passed.
Yeah, because when you, like, probate delays, things like that, when there's all those arguments and all the costs that come with that.
It's ridiculous because a probate in New South Wales, where there's no will and substantial assets, so one piece of real estate or more, you're looking at a minimum of 6 to 12 months. Absolute minimum.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not to mention the New South Wales trustee fees is like something ridiculous.
Yeah.
1.5% I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly right.
T level as well.
Yeah, T level, yeah.
It's valued on the property.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a word here staring at me, and I have to be honest, I don't know what it means. Tax drag.
So the longer your estate takes to resolve,
Yeah.
the tax drag is the tax that estate has to pay over that course of period of time. So when it should have been resolved in 6 months' time, now it's dragged over 5 years, 6 years, that's the tax drag.
So an
It just
example.
keeps accumulating.
And if it hasn't been paid, then obviously it's the interest part that's accumulating at the same time.
Right,
So
okay.
it's multiple different consequences as a result of that not being resolved on time. And if there's any associated penalties, that will come across.
Yeah, so it'd be quite a big chunk of money.
So an example, you know, mum and dad passed away and the house is to be, you know, inherited by the siblings and they don't sell it within 2 years. What happens then? You pay tax, right? So that could be one of the tax drugs as well.
Yeah. Well,
Obviously not proper planning, not knowing it can be costly at some stage.
yeah. So we talk about estate planning, we talk about having wills. What about the DIY will? And how much of a problem is that one?
Oh God.
Yeah.
And how many backfires do you see?
Oh,
It's
The one I download on the online is just built.
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
well, there's actually a better one that I've come across recently, and I must admit, I didn't know they existed, but you can walk into an Australia Post and get a DIY will.
Yeah, $20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know about
that was
this.
20 years ago, right?
No,
No,
it's
they're
still
still
there.
Well, actually,
For
I had
$70.
a client randomly come to my office a number of months ago
Yeah.
and said, I've gone to the post and I bought this DIY will. Can you witness it for me? Can you sign off on me?
She's saying absolutely not.
Whilst I decline because I can't give advice, and I mean, yes, I'm legally allowed to sign off, but I won't because, well, I don't know you, I don't know your affairs. And
Yeah.
I prefer you do it properly. Now, a DIY will is a one-way ticket to disaster and potential litigation, like Ray mentioned before. Because unless you're an individual with zero beneficiaries, zero form of asset, or anything of value, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Get some proper advice. You invest in your estate. A couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 is a drop in the ocean in comparison to what the ramifications can be if it's not done correctly.
Absolutely, because you've got to consider your super balances, you've got to consider things like, whether you've got a company.
Yes, the company will have its own will, and I think they will have their own structure. Superannuation obviously usually sits outside the estate, because if you've got the dependents, then you normally have that dependents nominated through a form of a binding nomination or the non-binding nomination.
Yeah, but is that current enough to date? How many people have put beneficiaries on their super fund that sits there for 30 years?
And if there's an ex-spouse and oops, it's gone.
Absolutely. What about blended families?
Yeah, and again, that's
And we live in a world where blended families is the norm.
it is
Oh,
very
absolutely.
common.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
the
the
DIY will take none of that into consideration. Let alone, and on top of that, tax planning and financial obligations, proper advice. That's something that you'd see challenged very, very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Ray, you leaned in on something about superannuation being outside of your estate. I don't think most people realise that. They just assume it's divvied up.
It is, until you specifically mention that in the binding beneficiary and non-binding beneficiary form that you're going to be nominating your estate as a beneficiary.
Yeah.
But again, you have your own tax ramifications in that part. And that's the key consideration when you're doing your estate planning. What is my tax planning looks at the back end of it.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that legacy that you're trying to pass on, you want to make sure that it's there and it's not consumed by ATO.
Yeah,
ATO
absolutely.
probably hates me, but
I think they hate most of us. The show's
Yeah,
daily.
that bit of commission is not going to be happy after this one.
So, what other things should people be considering when they're thinking about wills and estates? Like we've got super, we've got property, like what other kind of things should people be considering?
What they should be considering is, of course, their main assets. So their real estate, which is probably the largest asset most people will purchase in their lifetime.
Yeah.
The beneficiaries, of course.
Yeah.
One very important note is the executor. Who manages it? We come across a lot of situations where you might have, let's say, 3 beneficiaries, 2 brothers and a sister, but one of the brothers is the executor as well. That causes conflict. It's not a conflict, but can cause conflict amongst the siblings. That's something that has to be taken into consideration. A lot of the times people will actually appoint their accountant, financial planner, solicitor, advisor of some sort as their executor, because those parties are third parties, non-biased, and they're going to essentially execute the estate per the wishes of the deceased at that point. So that's a really important one. But also potentially considering what has led up to this point. So yes, I've got my assets. Yes, I've got my beneficiaries, and I might be really complex. I might have a self-managed super with property.
Yeah.
I may have some expensive artwork. A lot of people have property overseas, which is a whole other issue. But what you also want to consider, and it touches on the point I mentioned previously, is things that have occurred and events that have occurred during your lifetime. Because you may well say, well, I want to divide an estate amongst my beneficiaries equally.
Yeah.
But it may not work that way, because does one deserve more than the other? Potentially.
Yeah.
It may well be the case, because one may have dedicated their life to looking after you, or one may have assisted you at a certain point.
Yeah.
One may have had it extremely easy.
So, can I ask you a separate question then? We talk about this in financial planning, right? We have annual reviews, like we do ongoing, making sure everything's current, like, because obviously the way things are invested, move, change, whatever. Likewise with a will or estate, would you treat that like a live document? Would you do a will, set it, forget it?
it's every year, Mel. Every year we speak to our client to go, you've had the change in beneficiaries, you've had the person who's nominated as an executor that's passed away. So it's a live document that's constantly changing depending on client's circumstances, marriage, divorce, kids. So you've got this range of and raft of circumstances that will sort of impact. And I think, as we were talking about before,
Yeah.
people sort of go do DIY wills. The cheap will cost you most,
Oh,
not in dollars, but in damage.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely.
But then let's layer on that, like, I've got some stats here, which is, I find it very astounding, and it talks about the family fallout and how that emotion destroys wealth more than tax. And it says here, 70% of family wealth is lost by the second generation, 90% is gone by the third, and the cause of that is silence, not markets. So, talk me through, you'd all see this, especially because you're dealing with generational.
I think you mentioned it, I had a client at Narellan, it was a dad, and also one of the siblings. And most of the properties that the dad is invested under one of the siblings' names, right? And he thinks in his head that's way to pass wealth, not considering the other siblings are equal, like you mentioned before.
Oh, I remember who you're talking about. Yes.
And we got talking about the estate planning side, what some of the consequences of that. And he didn't think that way because he's always done it that way.
Yeah.
And he thought that was fair in his eyes. So I said, well, why don't you bring your other two sons and the daughter that was in the office? Maybe we can have a discussion around what's appropriate for them and what's fair. Again, what's fair to the other party is different, as you know, it's going to be different. And he sat there thinking, well, I think you're right, Jack. I've never thought about it that way. I think it's sometimes being, like Ray said, it's not being lazy, but it's not aware. So until somebody tells me, hey, this is what we need to look at, this is what I can do for financial planning, the wills, testament trust, maybe sometimes we put it in there, and then let's engage an appropriate estate planning lawyer. Let's get it sorted.
But I think in my circumstance, what I've seen with clients is, having that silence creates the mistrust and resentment, right?
Yeah.
And that resentment then leads to, like I mentioned before, a lot of litigation and not considering variety of other factors that could have been included in that and spoken about, which could have been hashed out, talked about, agreed upon. That would have provided a robust estate planning and a clarity to go with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
It goes back to what Ray mentioned earlier as well about having those discussions. The reality is, let's be realistic, who wants to talk about death?
No, exactly. But keeping those private wealth plans, they're not creating any, kumbaya moments. They're creating left, right, centre.
Exactly right. And the silence is a real killer because, yes, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But it's going to put you in an uncomfortable position, or your family in an uncomfortable position, which it's not had.
Yeah.
Especially when these individuals or companies or trust or whatever start to really see that asset pool increase.
Absolutely.
And you see this family break up, and it's realistic. It's not over the money; it's over the meaning of
Who
what
got
you've
what
done,
and
what
why.
have you done to me.
It's emotional more
It's
than
emotional.
anything,
So
right?
it's not good about money because before their parents passed away, they'll do anything for each other.
Right.
It's
It
like,
wasn't about the money in the first place.
It's entitlement or perception.
Yeah.
It's about the meaning of it as to what it relates to you and why did you do this to me. And
it's like,
absolutely.
it's like I spend more time with dad than that holiday house, maybe I should get it.
That's a brilliant point. That arises every day.
That arises,
That I was with mum every day, and I helped clean the house every day.
Yeah.
Where the hell were you? It's that little meaning that Ray just mentioned. It's probably a lot more about the money and what you're actually receiving, right?
But I'd almost argue that there's probably, is it unreasonable? Because at the same breath, if you were someone's de facto and they had an ex-wife, or, you get this whole thing where, someone's single and they've got a girlfriend on the side, or they're single and they've got a boyfriend on the side, but for 10 years that girlfriend or boyfriend cleaned the house, did this, did that, and they left them nothing and go, well, I did this, I took them to all the medical appointments, I cooked, I cleaned, I did whatever, why are all the kids getting everything? And I'm not saying that that's right, but that's something that happens every single day where things are debated from a spousal point of view. You'd almost say the same from a sibling or a child point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the whole blended family thing as well. That becomes, when you've got a blended family, from what I've seen, it becomes extremely complex.
Yeah.
It's where it takes a real next level turn.
Yeah.
Where you've got to seek some really, really competent advice.
Yeah. Then let's just turn the conversation to a financial planning point of view and the tax, right? So we talk about, not only just having an estate and a will and all the bits that go with it and a good legacy plan, but also having these conversations with people, because we talk about the taxes that come with some of these things, and some of these, I'm imagining some people get left with really big bills, like that inheritance wasn't necessarily a blessing.
Well, they had a good intention, but they get that bill, like I would say.
Yeah. So what do they look like?
So think about it this way. So mum and dad have left this significant amount of money to the kids. Now, obviously, I'm going to speak jargon here, but the majority of the component of that super fund is taxable, which means the kids are going to be paying because they're over the age of 18, it's a non-dependent tax rate that they pay.
Yeah.
It's almost at about, let's just say 30% in this example. So out of that $1 million or $2 million, they end up dishing out $600,000.
Yeah.
This could have been very well avoided, well not completely avoided, but you could have done what we call in our land of, you could have done cash up contribution strategies, and you could have staggered that out, planned that out over the period of course of your life, which means the tax they would have had to pay could have potentially shrunk from having to pay $300,000 down to $50,000.
Yeah.
And look, obviously, if I look at some of the ATOs to what they've collected in some of the inheritance taxes, it almost accounts for about $2 billion. Now,
It's crazy. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
The majority, I would say, would be that, not knowing what to do.
It's the
And that
inheritance
is
tax.
estate planning period of time.
Yeah.
Passing that wealth or efficiently transfer the legacy.
Or that investment property that that
Yeah.
you sort of thought about how to sort of properly dispose that asset off while they have the opportunity.
Yeah. So if we treat the will as the foundation, what would be the tools that you would use or you would recommend to make sure that this legacy is protected beyond the will?
Well, the tool simply is get advice.
Yeah.
There's no better solution to go, this is what my structure looks like, this is my lawyer, you're my planner, and where the lawyer and the planner sits down together and articulates as to what they want as a structure, how it should be planned out, mapped out, and structured out.
Yeah. And what would that ecosystem look like?
The ecosystem would, look, what we sort of see in the ecosystem sort of change. It will depend on the structure of the family, whether it's blended, non-blended, whatever you got as an asset, company, trust, has what is the structure of that trust, and depending on the outcome, who gets what, the outcome of the strategy will change for each entities accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What about you, Jack?
No, there's nothing to add. I think it starts with really having that discussion. There's many tools to use, such as obviously the wills. I'm starting to use now also testament trust, how that looks for a family, how that protects, if I know there's going to be businesses there, how that supports the kid and safeguard those assets to transfer. Obviously, that's a lawyer's job as well. From a strategy perspective, we can discuss that as well. So we go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So the biggest part we didn't talk about was what happens if they die young and the kids are minors.
That's literally what I was just about to say. We're talking about wills and estates as if you live this wonderful life, which is great. That's the goal. But what happens if the unforeseen or God forbid that happens? What happens in that scenario? Because you've then got minors, so someone's then got to take
guardianship. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, you cannot determine the length of your life, but you can determine.
Very wise words.
You can determine the depth of your pool and your estate. That's what you can determine, and you can control that. Now, that starts at the phrase and the mentality at, I'm not too young to have a will.
I think the moment you get married, you should have a will, or the moment you have an asset.
I've seen people do wills with my team at the age of 18. Turn 18, mum and dad have them get a solicitor, do a will. They might not even own property, they just do it anyway. Now, I'm not saying you have to get a will at 18, but start to think about it. Especially if you're young and old. You're early 20s, pushing mid 20s to 30s. You might buy your first piece of real estate. You might start doing some investments. Younger guys these days do other investments, crypto, shares, etc. Those are all assets, right? So start thinking about it, because the reality is maybe not everyone's going to live a really long life, or a long life, right? I mean, I've seen a scenario where, and obviously without breaching any kind of privilege here, but and I won't mention too much detail, but I've seen a scenario where there was an individual who was in their late 40s. Now that's not old, in my view at least, it's not old at all. And this individual had a terminal illness, which they lived for a number of years. And we knew it was leading to the path of the end, essentially. And this individual also had significant assets, including multi-million-dollar businesses.
Yeah.
I was not directly involved until a late stage, but there was no will, even in the knowing that there was terminal illness with minors and with a spouse who naturally will take it all because she's been part of the journey and she's assisted in building that. She's been essentially in a partnership with the individual to build a business and build a crazy portfolio. There was never a will, and there was never even a thought of a will until the end stage when it was too late, because you lose that capacitation.
But I mean, what about if let's just say I'm married to a spouse, but I don't want to necessarily get it. Maybe I like my cat. I'm just saying. I'm like,
just disclaimers here. This is not about you.
You're about to open up a very dangerous can of worms.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because
this is blended beyond blended.
Essentially, it's you know, like I've done the will, and essentially I've seen this common scenario going, well, I don't necessarily want it to go to her.
that's a problem because
I have heard that where the spouse will go,
absolutely.
Yeah.
like, you know, you might have been my wife and built this world with me, but you can live in our home until your days are, you know, are done. But everything will go to the kids, like.
But is it automatic that the spouse automatically
And you
inherits
can't
this?
sell the house, and you can't do this.
Generally, in a general sense, it's likely to happen if there's no will. The spouse will apply for probate or a letters of administration, etc. If there was any assets, and it'd go through the process. But if you did have a will, and you say, well, I decided I want to exclude my spouse, you best bet yourself that's going to court, unless she just concedes or he concedes.
But is there a hierarchy system to go spouse, mum and dad, brother?
Generally, yes, and kind of in that order. But I will say one thing: you've got different cultures and different religions that govern it differently as well.
Yeah.
And an example is the Islamic faith, where it's divvied up in a different way, where it's not a hierarchy system; it's divvied up in a different way.
Yeah.
And even then, if there's a will in place potentially, a dispute will arise. And I've seen wills come in, and touching on what Ray said earlier about refreshers and renewals. I've once seen a will from 1940. It was almost on a scroll piece of paper.
No, really?
Wow.
Yeah, from 1940. Not updated, person still alive. And you can only imagine how many times the circumstances, the beneficiaries' assets have changed.
You would imagine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what we touched on just a second ago in terms of having minors and being in a younger position, maybe 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, and you're starting to look at the position of, okay, safeguarding assets, protecting myself, planning. There's other mechanisms as well, other than law. You've got things like powers of attorney you've got to consider potentially. You've got things like enduring guardianships you've got to consider. You've got to be able to potentially say, well, if I'm getting on with my age, I might need someone to assist with my decisions and how I make those decisions. Whether that's power of attorney or a guardianship potentially for your lifestyle and medical decisions, or a power of attorney for your financial and business and property decisions potentially.
Yeah.
And that thing's always worried me to go, well, how do I judge someone's cognitive ability to understand that they are in that sort of headspace? So how do you guys as lawyers sort of determine that with that person's in that cognitive frame of mind to make that decision of the will? And does that even come back to you guys to go, well, you did the wrong thing because you did not judge that person on his cognitive ability? Absolutely.
There's a fair bit of liability there. And what any advice I'd give is get it confirmed by an expert first.
Yeah.
So you hire external.
You
for
have
example,
to.
like
We can't make those assessments,
Yeah.
right? As finance planners or solicitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't make those assessments. We
Yeah.
need to be done by a professional, someone in the medical field, like I
Yeah.
said.
But sometimes face value, they're a completely normal human being.
But
and then after
That's
half
half
an
the
hour,
population.
Yeah.
but half an hour
Or they could
later,
just be happy.
they're goldfish, like me.
Well, yeah. And
Yeah.
well, there's another
Joking, by the way.
Just a disclaimer.
Not a goldfish.
There's another part to that
It's a
as well,
shark.
and it's the big D word, duress.
Ah.
Duress is something that is sprinkled in his field.
Did you get sprinkled in his field?
Sprinkled, yeah. It's so common.
Yeah, wow.
Well, think about it. You might have the favourite son or the favourite daughter, but you've got 5 others potentially.
Yeah.
The son or the daughter or whoever it may be. I'm going to take my mum or dad to get their will done. I'm going to go to the solicitor. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Let's get it done. Although it may not be intentional, or it could be potentially, and the mum and dad doesn't know any better. It's a form of duress, and that's something that can get overturned. Oh, well, put this for me, and then put X out for your sibling.
Yeah, unless it's been done all equally.
Exactly right. Well, you've got to avoid that conflict. You really have to avoid that conflict because it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Oh, you got mum's will done last week. Well, why did you go get mum's will done with her?
Yeah.
Why were you present? I wasn't.
Yeah.
Recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And look, we talk about responsibility and what have you, and it's like, we do financial advice, we do financial plans, and I hear you guys talk about it, and, hence why we like having you around, is how do we then do those plans and then integrate that with estate planning?
Yep.
So when we're doing a plan for someone, is saying, have you got X, Y, and Z? Have you got your estate?
We do. So I think in our part of our fact find process, Mel, there's obviously the big questions around the will, but it's also, as we do our regular reviews, we also sort of tend to get to know our clients a little better over a period of time, and sort of coming back to that duress or perhaps elder abuse and cognitive ability, you start to notice those certain patterns happen over years because you've got to know these clients and
what do you do when it happens?
Look, obviously for each circumstance there's a different set of course of remediation, but obviously if there is elder abuse we have to report it.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of instance like that, there is elder abuse hotline, so we sort of get to do that.
Or coercive,
Yeah, and then we've sort of done that, and I've done that particularly in one case, where sort of daughter sort of threatening the mother to go, you're not going to get to see the grandkids, and if you don't do X, Y, Z, if you don't give me the X amount of dollars, I'm not going to pay you money. I'm not going to get you to the grandkids.
And you know what, I've just had a light bulb moment, and estate planning, having whether it be a lawyer, whether it be through your financial advisor where you do everything yearly or a combination, I think there's that layer of protection of, stopping that family fallout, but then hitting on what you're just saying now, it's you're almost protecting them as well from duress because you can see the behavioural change.
You have
a legal obligation.
Yeah.
It's not for us, it's not that it's not my problem, it is my problem.
Yeah.
I have to, if there is a form of an abuse, I've got to report it. If there is cognitive decline, I've got to speak to the family.
Yeah.
And maybe not in front of the client necessarily, or could be in front of the client. But each situation warrants a different solution, and obviously you've got to be very careful of how sensitive the topic is.
Yeah, it gives the phrasing, holistic planning a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it's not just about super and tax, it's not just about wealth creation or retirement planning, it's about behaviour and protection in a different level.
Like you're in different parts of house and as part of financial planning.
Yeah.
You're doing,
Exactly.
Okay, so I guess for today, we've covered off a lot. Has anyone else got anything that they feel that we could have added to this area that we haven't? I know there's so many things to say about this stuff. Yeah, okay. So the things that I've taken away from today, so thank you so much, I've learned so much. Number 1, I need to get a will. Number 2, I need to get a financial plan. Number 3, I need to get it done every year. And number 4, I need to make sure I have a conversation with my kids that you are inheriting all my debt. And that's okay. I will share the debt equally. You don't need to fight. Yeah, and if one of you earn way more money than the other, I will give you more of my debt than the others. That's my takeaways from today. But no, on a serious note, I think it's definitely, I've learned a lot from today, and I think even our listeners will have learned a lot. It's not just about having a will, it's about having conversations. Even those difficult conversations are better when you're alive than when you're not, and it doesn't matter about age. It's also about putting that in collaboration with an estate plan, also thinking about the taxes that come out of it and all the other parts that go with it. Like there are so many layers to, I never realised that wills could be just so complex. Like you think you have a will and that's all there is to it, but there are just so many facets to consider. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mel.
Thank you for having us.
My absolute pleasure. But before we just quickly wrap up, from each of you, just one thing that you would say about wills and estates or planning, whether it be from a financial advice, legal, emotional, whatever, one each. Jack, you can go first.
It's what you want to leave behind as your legacy to your loved ones. I think that's a key takeaway for me.
Fantastic. I love that. That's actually very nice. It's nice to see you settled down.
It's working now, my medicine.
Ahmed?
There's two. I do apologise.
No, don't apologise. Go for it. You can even say three.
No, thank you. Start planting your seed. Start building the foundation. Start growing the tree. Seek advice adequately, and build that team. Start to gather that team for yourself. The financial planner, the accountant, the solicitor. There's so many services out there. I mean, there's an abundance. Get a free consultation. Have a chat to someone.
Yeah.
Start getting things in order. Start preparing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you guys said it in another episode. Prepare, or sorry, was it plan? Fail to plan, or what was the saying?
If you fail to plan,
If you
plan
fail
to
to
fail.
plan, you plan to fail, and that is so relevant and sorry, I'm not.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's so relevant to this particular topic.
Yeah.
Because if there's no plan, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah. Well through.
Well, close to it.
Thank
Close
you.
to it, yeah.
I love that. Ray, you've always got words of wisdom. You've always got one-liners. Just with a bang.
Yeah, so for me, it's without clarity, your legacy becomes litigation.
Oh, see, he's always got a thing. So for me, it will be reach out to us at Riker Capital. We do give complimentary consultations, and we can talk about your wealth, your well-being, and your estate, and then hook you up with all the right people.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So legacy isn't just about what you leave. It's about what you've taught. Thanks for joining me on the Wealth Guide podcast with Riker Capital. Structure your legacy with clarity, share it with purpose, and you'll build wealth that lasts way beyond the numbers. Next time on the Wealth Guide podcast, we're going to talk about automation, AI, and technology, and how it's reshaping our financial planning future, but why human strategy is still more important than ever.